Thank you for being with us this evening, and I appreciate you being a part of our introduction into this very exciting project that we will be working with this team at Colorado State University, along with our friends at the Olson Ranches, Douglas and Art Olson, who are part of our National Reference Sire Program testing. And over the next few minutes, you'll learn a lot about our project. We would encourage you to stay involved as we continue to announce things that are going on with this sustainability project. We know it's a big buzzword in our industry, talking about sustainability and its effect on the ranchers, the feedlots, the packers, and ultimately what it's going to mean to our consumers.
Sustainability is not a nice to have anymore. It's a need to have. It's an expectation not only of our consumers, but more importantly today, of our customers, and most importantly, potentially our financial partners. And that extends from the banking community all the way to our investors. And you know, the thing about sustainability is that it means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and the definitions are quite variable, and yet society really cares, and society is asking a lot of questions about how they can improve sustainability, right? And again, I think all of us have a most important subject. You know, it may be water, it may be animal welfare, it may be food safety, it may be social equity, for example, and all of those things fall under the sustainability umbrella. But the pressure the beef industry is under the most comes from climate change and specific perceptions and reality related to greenhouse gas emissions from beef production systems.
We certainly understand the importance of this research and the effect it will have on multiple different parts of our industry. Obviously, the American cattleman has been tremendous in their ability to produce more with less. We raise more beef with fewer cows than any of our competitors around the world. We know that cattle are natural upcyclers, and so the question always arises, why are we even worrying about this type of research? Well, we're talking about a population that's going to double by 2040 or 50. We talk about the fact that the good Lord is not going to make any more natural resources in terms of land. And so how do we become more efficient? And how do we, from a genetic standpoint, and that's the focus of this research, from a Hereford standpoint, how can we affect the overall sustainability and effect on environment that our cattle have? So it's going to take a lot of components. Over time, we've definitely documented the value of Hereford genetics in commercial cow herds in terms of fertility and longevity. We've done a tremendous amount of research in collecting individual phenotypes for feed intake. And as we understand, all of those things are going to have a very positive effect in terms of sustainability as we move forward in this industry.
The big objective of this is to give the American Hereford Association, its breeders and their customers, tools that are going to help improve the environmental footprint of beef production. You know, with the national goal to be climate neutral by 2040, you know, this is going to help in the efforts to get that and actually position Hereford as a leader in improving the environmental impact of beef production.
No matter how good we get at our current evaluation of the animals, we can always get better. And so, you know, if you think back in history, we've done a tremendous job of making, first we had a desire to make animals kind of short and thick, and we did that in the 1950s, and then desire to make them very tall, and we did that in the 1980s. And now we're more in the era of, you know, good carcass, good growth, but we need the animal to be overall very fit to environments. And so Hereford does that really well. And of course, the big one that's coming up today is the phrase of sustainability. And so we're doing a lot of thinking and early development on what does that really mean to us? What are our new traits of interest? How do we get this kind of data?
Well, you know, the Hereford breed and the American Hereford Association has always been a leader in breed improvement from the beginning of the early days of the Total Performance Recording Program. And so, you know, when we start to go down this road and add traits, you know, back in the early 2000s, we added genomically enhanced EPDs. We were one of the first breeds to really get involved and engaged in that. This is just another layer, just another opportunity that might inform us of what the true genetics of our footprint might be. And so I think it's critically important for us to remain positive about this type of research, that we need to be aggressive at telling our own story. We need to have the data so that others aren't telling our story for us, that we're able to tell our story for us. And this is going to help us maintain that license to operate. And I think that's a key term that we all need to understand. What is our license to operate? What is society going to allow us to do to stay in business and to feed a growing population?
The American Hereford Association has over a decade of information on feed efficiency and feed utilization. And as we learn more about how that's related to environmental sustainability, we realize we may be able to leverage some of that information to develop even a better selection tool for the Hereford breeders. Now, one of the challenges associated with this is, all right, so let's say we do that. What is the relationship between these environmental selection tools or these environmental traits and actually a lot of the production traits that we've collected data on in the past? You've got sustained cow fertility, birth weight, mature size, all of these things. Can we leverage that information to actually produce better selection tools, but also be cognizant of any unfavorable relationships with a lot of things we want to improve already?
Getting more cows bred early in a cycle, winning more pounds of calf. A more fertile cow is a more sustainable cow. And what's the beauty with the Hereford Association, and specifically Hereford Genetics, is all the research that's been done by the association and the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in feed efficiency specifically. The U.S. Meat Animal Research Center found nearly a 2-pound advantage in intake, favoring the straight Hereford steer compared to the other breeds that were compared to in that study. And that really adds up and makes a huge difference on feed conversion. Dr. Lahman at Oklahoma State University showed a same advantage in comparing the F1 female, the good Baldy, to the straight bred black female, a 2-pound advantage in intake in those cows on a pasture-based kind of a diet. And so when you start adding up all the things that the F1 female can do, it fits into a great sustainability story. And so the association has evolved over time, and we've continued to document the research, the advantages that Hereford brings to the table. It all adds up to a great testimonial for the breed.
We have a lot of feed intake information that helps correlate some of the direction that we're headed over years' time. But as far as any greenhouse gas or any particular sustainability with water use or feed consumption, but we're looking to dial in more on those Hereford sired cattle that potentially have less water usage, less feed intake, less gas emission, all those things that would make a Hereford sired animal be more sustainable than our competitors.
Our sustainability research is really grassroots. We're trying to capture gas emitted from feedlot steers to determine how much gas is being produced and how it's related to performance. And I think that's a very basic level of knowledge and understanding that we as an industry need to really get our arms around. That might inform us of some other things that will be interesting. How does it relate to feed efficiency, feed intake? The Hereford breed has worked for 2 decades now on feed intake and identifying those genetics that are more efficient than others. And so this might just be another layer of information that can benefit us, going down that journey.
I think since we've put in the Grow Safe bunks and been able to measure feed efficiency, I think it highlights the differences that are out there. I think over the years there has been very little selection for feed efficiency. And so as we start to document that, we're learning what differences are out there and what can be done to improve that. I think it's just a fairly drastic difference between sire groups that can be documented. And so as we learn to balance traits together, I think feed efficiency is certainly one of those that we're going to know more about, have the information, and Hereford has a lot of data right now on feed efficiency. So as we leverage that in the future, we'll make more progress to make our cow herd, our feedlot animals more efficient and use those resources available.
Feed efficiency and efficiency metrics in general are some of our most important sustainability outcomes. And I guess in the last year that's shifted a lot, right? We were really only focused on improving efficiency through the sustainability lens for so long because we were really measuring everything in a footprint, okay? So it's basically the numerator, right, of a greenhouse gas, total greenhouse gas emission, divided by the denominator, which is total pounds that we're producing. And we all know, you know, we produce a lot more pounds with many fewer animals than we ever have before. So some of the challenges that we need to focus on now are, in addition to those, a reduction in absolute emissions, right? So generally speaking, when we're talking about feed efficiency, right, they could be, what we need to get to is they're eating less and gaining more, right? Not necessarily that they're eating more but gaining more. And that's generally what the trends we've seen so far is. An animal eats more, he gains more, right? So feed efficiency is still trending the way we want it to, down. But what we really need to start to do is to select for or to work with other technologies so where they're actually eating less and gaining more, right? So it's a win-win because that intake, the amount of feed that they're ingesting is a true indicator of the amount of gas that they're going to be emitting.
In terms of the genetics and how that impacts sustainability, if we identify phenotypes that are related to sustainability, and we have one, we know that's greenhouse gas, but we also have another called nitrogen. So if we can determine that there's differences amongst sire groups in terms of their progeny's excretion of either methane or their progeny's excretion of nitrogen, then we know that there's probably a genetic component to that. So how we approach this is we got to go out and collect a lot of data, and then we marry that data with the pedigree in the sires, and then we can perform statistical analyses to determine how much of the genetic component is explained, or how much of the variability in those traits is explained by the sire. And that's how all EPDs are calculated. Leveraging these novel traits in terms of how quickly an animal reaches their harvest endpoint, we can leverage that data as well to add information to this new trait that we are just beginning to collect data on. And what that'll do is it gives us a lot more information on a larger number of individuals, sires, because successful EPD calculations is one about whether it's heritable, but you also need large numbers of data points on a large number of different types of sire genetics. So if we can represent a greater proportion of the Hereford population in terms of these other potentially genetically related traits, we could bring this to production more quickly.
We kind of have a unique team at Colorado State University in our current program, because if you go back to Colorado State University in the beginning from Dr. Jim Brinks and Dr. Howard Stonecker, and then Drs. Borden and Golden, we have a long history of developing new selection tools for breeders and then delivering that to the industry in the form of EPD. And so we've kind of reassembled that team perspective in how we look at genetic improvement in the beef industry and the things that are important. You know, historically we worked with things like birth weight and weaning weight and yearling weight. And then we started thinking about, well, there's new ways we could actually evaluate calving ease. Then we looked at how do you incorporate ultrasound information into carcass evaluation to make even more rapid genetic improvement by measuring the breeding animal. Well, we're kind of at that junction now in looking at environmental sustainability, environmental impact from the standpoint of developing selection tools for breeders so that they can use those to produce beef in a more environmentally sustainable manner.
You know, we're in the world of breeding and genetics, and so we're always trying to generate or trying to develop a breeding value so that we can do selection. So we can rank the animals from the best ones to the worst ones and use that type of information to do selection. So what would come out of this? Well, obviously, you know, the easiest way to do that is some very direct trait, you know, some greenhouse gas measure or methane, and we have a direct EPD for that. But, you know, quickly we also have learned that now our number of traits per animal are huge. And so we start to look at indexes to help us put multiple traits together so we can do, you know, index selection over broad things. So Hereford has a very good suite of indexes. You know, like I also have some cattle in the south, so we look at the Brahman Hereford, the BI2 index, we look at that a lot. And so the way I view this is that there may be initially some EPDs released on greenhouse gases, but maybe it all starts to merge together in a sustainability index. So a sustainability index might look like, you know, part of the weighting of that index might be on greenhouse gas emission, part of that index might be on sustained cow fertility, maybe efficiency of growth. You know, a very sustainable thing is animals that grow on short, steep growth curves and get to finish quickly. So, you know, maybe it's a whole nother new trait like days to finish or something like that. So I could see many things coming over the next, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years very quickly that could be very helpful to select animals that are more environmentally fit, more sustainable, and so forth.
We take for granted, you know, what we do every day is a sustainable operation because we've been here for, you know, several years, and beef has been on the planet for a long time. And I don't think you hear it from a producer base just yet, but the research and where we're headed is going to make it more conversational to those producers in the years to come.
There's no one more concerned about the environment or about our land and our resources than the American rancher and the American farmer, because that's where we get our life. We grow from the soil and the grass and the wind and the rain and the sun to produce America and the world's food supply. So as conditions have changed and the game has changed and things are more expensive, it's important for the American cattleman to be sustainable and lasting and efficient.
I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do for our consumers. I think it's the right thing to do for our kids. You know, we may not contribute a lot to greenhouse gas emissions, but I think in the last 5 years, we all know that the climate is changing, and if man is contributing to that, then I think we need to do our part. I think that it's important for our financial partners, you know. You know, they're under an incredible amount of pressure from a lot of different governments, not the US, but in other parts of the globe, to divest in animal agriculture because of its impact on climate. And so if we can prove to those financial partners that we are good stewards, and more than just saying, and as much as this pains me to say, but yes, we've been here, you've been here, producers have been here for generations, but today we have to say we've been here for generations, and here's how we continue to improve, and we continue to care, right? There's the proof points in today's society are expected. Whether that's fair or not, they're expected. So I think there's all of that, which is in the bucket of do the right thing, right? Because it's what's good for beef and what's good for Herefords ultimately. And then I think there's this other piece, which is if we get this right and we can measure a reduction, you could get paid for it. Because we've seen big companies make commitments around net zero goals, and there will be an expectation that those companies make progress on those goals, and they're going to have to incentivize the adoption of practices that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And if the Hereford Association has one, I would say there's an opportunity to get paid for that.
We're excited about the research. We're excited to be working with the team at CSU to not only give benefit to the Hereford breed, but to the cattle industry. Clear back at the beginning of time, when Hereford was introduced to the industry, the breed was put out and was part of the British Revolution because of their efficient beef cattle production. And we've stayed true to those terms over the decades, and this is just a next step in the evolution of our research. I want to thank and congratulate the American Hereford Association Board of Directors for their forward thinking, their investment into this kind of research. We want to thank the team at CSU, all the scientists, as well as Kim and her team to work with us. I also want to thank the folks, Art and Douglas Olson at Olson Ranches. They've been a tremendous asset to the Hereford breed over a number of years as we've evaluated young sires. And again, we're just excited to get this project started.